day to all. I am very happy that we are here together. I cannot say good night or good morning or good evening, but I say good day because we have different time zones. My name is Hannah Mitra. I am the chairperson of URI the Netherlands, and I'm very honored to be here to presenting you this wonderful event organized by URI the Netherlands together with PFI. We are actually in the Netherlands celebrating, especially in the place where I'm living, The Hague, we are celebrating a week of International Women's Day, International Women's Week, actually. So a lot of days we have celebrating this day, and it's very good that we as URI also decided to do this on this day, the 7th of March. As we are celebrating International Women's Day, we are thinking of the women who are running, who are on the flee, who are seeking shelter, and that's why it's very important that we see what's happening with them, that we be in togetherness with them, and therefore I have found a very touchy video, and I would like Morgana, please, to share the video so that we can see what's happening with our sisters in Ukraine and Poland. I will now shut my mouth.
Our driver took a family of 9 people to his house. We are all crying.
At the local community center in Lubachov, 15 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Danuta Katspyak is a retired Russian language teacher and is collecting goods donated by people from all over Europe.
We are helping people on the other side of the border, the ones who stayed behind, who can't leave. Yesterday, we witnessed an incident when a disabled boy was not allowed to leave Ukraine because he was over 18. He and his family were forced to turn back. I could not bear to watch it, but we have to help.
Many of the goods are meant for the Ukrainian army.
We are packing plastic plates for the army on the other side of the border because they have a lack of everything. We are sending food, bread, everything that is easy to prepare.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine, Danuta has been driving across the border every day.
Our driver took a family of 9 people to his house. We are all crying with them when we saw the tragedy. The children were so weak and the mothers were passing out.
Crossing the border is always tricky, but the women say that today they have a lucky day because the border guard is someone they know, and it's going to be hopefully much easier to bring the goods in.
I am going to cry. They have just crossed the border.
Most refugees came from the region near the Ukrainian capital Kiev that came under heavy attack in the past days.
Mamy takie musy dla dzieci. Takie musy dla dzieci. Można więcej.
My husband drove us to the border. We left on February 26th and we travelled for 2 days and we stayed at the border for 2 days. My husband then went back to fight and I am extremely worried about him. The situation was very unpleasant. We heard very loud explosions. That is why I am here.
Despite the continuous stream of people trying to leave, border guards check every car thoroughly. People eagerly waiting until the gate to safety will open in front of them.
Only a few more meters and they're outside of Ukraine, traveling for 4 days, some of them. And there are mixed emotions. They're grateful that they finally get to safety, but very, very worried about what they're leaving behind.
Danuta is relieved to find a less chaotic situation than in the past few days.
They are not giving up. It's hard. This woman has traveled for 4 days, but she does not need to stay long at the border because the queue is shorter than before. People seem less exhausted. This time I'm not crying, as you can see.
Danuta's mission has been accomplished for now, but she will return with more goods as long as Russia's missiles and rockets force people out of Ukraine. Step fasten at the Budomich border in eastern Poland.
Anamitra, you're, yeah.
Today, this is a really touchy video I found. Today in the Netherlands, we have a big campaign about collecting money and collecting goods for Ukraine. So I thought it was very, very good to have this, to share this video with you. Now we're going to have this, this program, which we have two excellent speakers for this evening in the Netherlands. We have Morgana Seidhoven. She's an excellent speaker, and she's from PFI and also from the URI. She's a very active lady, and she's going to speak about, let me see, about the Istanbul, revisiting the case of the Istanbul Convention, a year after Turkey withdrew. And then after she's finished with her speech, we will listen to our honored Kastadip, if I may say so. Yeah, he will speak about the position of the Dalit women in society, Indian society. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we have two perspectives from different parts of the world to commemorating and celebrating International Women's Day. Morgana, I give the floor to you. Thank you so much.
So hopefully everybody can see this. A year ago, I actually gave a talk about the case of the Istanbul Convention. And quite a lot has happened since then, a year ago, because even then, when I actually talked about the Istanbul Convention last year, I had to announce as well that the country where the Istanbul Convention is actually named after, Turkey, actually withdrew. Formerly known as Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, it was signed in Istanbul in Turkey, May the 11th, 2011, and became known as the Istanbul Convention. On July 1st, 2021, Turkey withdrew from the convention. Unfortunately, Turkey was not the only country to have objected to the Istanbul Convention on the grounds that it, quote, threatens the nuclear family and traditional family values. So where are we a year later? Agnes Kalamard of Amnesty International wrote in an article headlined, "The fight to uphold the human rights of all those impacted by the scourge of gender-based violence continues." Quote, Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention is the tip of a dangerous anti-rights iceberg, but it has also galvanized activists around the world to stand up for women's and LGBTI rights. In the months since President Erdogan issued his decree, women in Turkey and beyond have been talking about the convention more than ever and taking to the streets to defend what it stands for. The fight to uphold the human rights of all those impacted by the scourge of gender-based violence continues. For an indication of the situation nearer to home, the Netherlands for me, I didn't really have to look very far. In fact, I found a notice for Monday, March 21st, just over a couple of weeks, for a meeting in Utrecht, actually called Femicide, an International Perspective. It's a U-Globe cafe about violence against women in Utrecht, the Netherlands. They describe the meeting as, in 2021, the United Nations reported that 81,000 women and girls were killed worldwide in the previous year, so in 2020. A majority of these female murder victims were killed by a man. The term femicide has been used to describe this phenomena for several decades. Femicide is more than statistics. Using the term femicide emphasizes that murdered women are victims of gender-based violence. This touches on many themes surrounding gender relations, such as domestic violence, unequal power relations, cultural norms, and macho culture. One of the speakers actually said that she will be talking about zooming in on the situation in the Netherlands. Quote, one of the European countries with the highest number of femicides per capita. And I was shocked. What? That the Netherlands has the highest number of femicides per capita. When I actually looked around and looked at various reports, there are very conflicting numbers actually. Some say that Serbia has the highest, some say that Romania has the highest. So the reports are not always, I can't say correct, because let's face it, the very fact that femicide is on our radar is enough to warrant a closer look. In the article, tens of women die in the Netherlands because of femicide. The question was asked, but what is it? Eureka von Norloos reminded us of the murders of nurse Linda van der Giezen and 16-year-old Humaira from Rotterdam. But what exactly is femicide, and does it happen more often? Nearly 60% of women who die as a result of violence are murdered by an ex or their partner. This percentage is different for men, which is about 4%. 40 women in the Netherlands die each year as a result of femicide. Usually, this is done by an ex or partner, very rarely by a brother or father. Often, the woman has a long history of abuse and it happens after a violent divorce. She actually says part of the problem is our use of language, and sometimes if a man is involved, it's described as a crime passionnel. So if a man is killed because of his manhood, which happens very rarely, this is explained as being a crime of passion. But so instead of calling it femicide, they call it a crime of passion. Eureka also said, when we talk of a crime of passion, it almost sounds like the guy can't help it, like he was too passionate. He loved her so much that he had to do this. It's like domestic violence. It sounds a bit homey, sounds so cozy, almost condoning, or a family drama, as if something happens in every family, but we're talking about murders here. Men who commit femicide generally cannot deal with emancipation, and it's often due to deeply rooted traditions in men. They find it difficult that a woman earns more, stands up for herself, and can end a relationship, while such a man believes that a woman should do what he says and take care of him. If that doesn't happen and the relationship even ends, then the thought is, I can't live without her, so she shouldn't live anymore. The fight never ends. Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. This is an article from January the 6th, 2022, so less than 6 weeks ago. Caroline Sorensen writes, although this withdrawal might not have direct consequences for other signatories, it firstly carries a strong symbolic message for the women and girls living in Turkey. The exit from the treaty and the accompanying statements claiming Turkish law already protects women's rights publicly and ignores numbers showing differently, or alternatively does not regard these as important. In any case, the message to women and girls seems to be how the state does not care about their rights nor their lives and will not fight for either. Here we see women protesters holding placards that read, Women in Revolt on International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women at a rally in Istanbul, November the 25th. The implementation of the treaty has had a direct positive effect on attitudes towards domestic violence, which then begs the question of whether the withdrawal might reverse an otherwise hopeful development in the treatment of women in Turkey. Furthermore, this act seems to be part of a wider tendency of backsliding of human and women's rights and might set a precedent for other countries to follow suit. Poland, Serbia, and Croatia have similarly examined the possibility of exiting the treaty on grounds of it clashing with national and cultural beliefs, and countries such as Hungary, Bulgaria, and Slovakia have not yet ratified the convention within their legislature, objecting to the treaty's definition of gender as, quote, socially constructed. It's therefore important to continuously recognize voices advocating for human rights in these societies and not let them be overshadowed by claims of cultural variation, as cultural diversity does not have to eliminate the upholding of basic human rights and gender equality. To blindly trust societies which have previously made promises or signed treaties to protect human rights to continuously work on implementing these promises is inadequate, as the political climate evolves and the current pandemic has put states and democracies under pressure. Constant reminders and focus on the issue might turn the relapsing tendency around and aid the people living in countries that reconsider their commitments. So what we're actually saying here is that even though Turkey has actually withdrawn, it actually raises a whole question again of what are women's rights, especially in the case of domestic violence. Amnesty reported and slates Turkey's record on protecting women. The report says Turkey put action into words, or put words into action, noted a significant gap between the promises of zero tolerance for violence against women and action by the government. Quote, the absence of a political will to achieve gender equality is one of the most important obstacles to ending violence against women in Turkey. Following the country's exit from the convention, Turkey has failed to produce a comprehensive law for women's rights and domestic violence, even though they announced plans actually in July 2021 to replace the Istanbul Convention with new laws. Of course, that has never happened. Moving to another group, another country, of course, we can't forget the women in Afghanistan. Around about July 2021, the moment that Turkey withdrew from the Istanbul Convention, the situation in Afghanistan deteriorated and the Taliban took over control. Here I just put a couple of pictures. Afghan women protesting Kabul. Women in Kabul shouted to parliamentarians to pass a law elimination of violence against women. And then the other side, we've got how domestic abuse is actually being seen now as a norm, and women are often seen as little more than household chattel. I'm just looking at the time. Yeah. So they have events of 2021. The Human Rights Watch reported, quote, in September, the Taliban eliminated the Ministry for Women's Affairs and repurposed its building as the Ministry for the Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, an institution mandated to enforce rules on citizens' behavior, including how women dress and when or whether women can move outside the home unaccompanied by a male relative. The shelters that had been established for women fleeing violence have been closed, and some women who live in them have been transferred to women's prisons. In Afghanistan, patriarchal traditions, poverty, and lack of education have stifled women's rights for decades. Now here's a heart-wrenching ordeal of there is a video which I wanted to show, but we haven't got time now, but I will post the video in the chat later. on February the 15th, 2022, a letter was sent to President Biden. In August 2021, the US embassy in Kabul had been evacuated, and as the Taliban were returned to power, an entire generation of Afghan women's rights activists have been wiped out. So a group of women sent a letter basically to the American embassy, but directly to Joe Biden, signed more than 220 Afghan women's rights advocates. Among the signatories are several former members of the Afghan parliament, including Fariza Kofi, the first woman president. The letter's signatories emphasize that a new treaty is the best chance we have of protecting women and girls in Afghanistan. Stop violence against women. Let's hold that in our heart and hope that the letter to Joe Biden has some effect, but again, let's all remember those women who are suffering day in and day out. Thank you. Some references, I'll post some of these as well on, I think probably on our URI page from the Netherlands. Thank you. So, Caster Dip, are you ready? You have some other news or about women. How far away is India? I don't know, I can't remember, but it's about 6 or 7 hours by flying. So please go ahead and tell us about Dalit women in Indian society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morgana. And I'm glad to be part of this group and to share with you about the Dalit women in India. I was just looking at the screen, and I'm the only man in this group, so I'm in the minority, but I represent a community which is also in minority, and it's I feel really privileged and honored to share actually their plight with you all in this forum today. I will not take much time because talking about the caste system itself, it takes a lot of time, and then talking about then Dalit women, which is the caste and the gender put together makes it actually even a bigger issue to talk about. Also, we'll need more time. But today, since we are, this is part of the observation of the International Women's Day, I think that maybe in a nutshell, I'll just tell you what it is like to be a Dalit woman in India and what the civil society is doing to bring peace and to establish justice in India. I'll share my screen as well, so you'll get some visuals, and then I'll explain to you what it is. Can you see my screen? Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about the